My name is Nancy Daubenberger, and I'm the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Transportation and honored to serve as the Chair of EQB. Pleased to report that Angie Smith, board member from Congressional District 5, has been appointed for an additional term of the board. Her original appointment was just to fill the end of Mehmet Kohler-Steenberg's term, and it expires in January 2025. But with this additional appointment, her term will run through January 1st of 2029. So glad to see that you're willing to be reappointed. And thank you for your participation on the board, Angie.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Board Member Smith. All right. And so with that, I don't think I have any other announcements today, just noting that just a few of us are here in person as per requirements, but generally it is a virtual meeting, all virtual today, and virtual presenters. So with that, that's why you see very sparse room of folks here. It was intended to be virtual. That was by plan with being December and not knowing what we were going to be facing for travel conditions. But with that, we will then go ahead and go to Executive Director Kushler for the roll call. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Arnold.
I am here. I have to drop off just before 1:30 for about an hour, and then I will return.
Okay. Board Member Bakken.
Accounted for.
Excellent. Board Member Bauerkemper.
I am present, thanks.
Board Member Brandt.
Present.
Commissioner Cunningham. I don't think we were expecting her. Chair Daubenberger here. Commissioner Gronball. Board Member Hintz.
Here.
Board Member Katzenberger. Commissioner Kessler couldn't join us. Assistant Commissioner Vanderbosch, present. Commissioner Verilek or Deputy Commissioner McKinnon. Board Member Nelson, I don't believe was able to join us. Commissioner Peterson.
Here.
Board Member Smith.
Present.
Commissioner Stroman.
I am here.
Chair Holman.
I am present.
Do we have Chair Zelli or Councilmember Vento? To check back, do we have Commissioner Gronball? Or Board Member? Sorry, do we have Board Member Katzenberger? I'm sorry, I wrote down yes. Yes, okay, I'm sorry. Board Member Martin. Do we have Nick? Okay, well, we do have 11.
It is a quorum. All right, great. Well, then next on the agenda will be the approval of the consent agenda. So your consent agenda items are the meeting minutes from the November 20th, 2024 meeting of EQB. That's packet page 5. Please note there was a correction sent to you, board members, as there was an inadvertent misspelling of a commenter's last name. So this would be the approval of the corrected minutes, and our apologies, Mr. Siegmeyer. And then also the preliminary agenda for today's meeting, the December 18th, 2024 EQB meeting, that is on your packet page 3. So with that, is there a motion? I'm sorry, I see a hand. Go ahead, Board Member Hintz.
Yes, I was hoping to make a motion to amend the agenda for today to include a discussion item of adding an EQB subcommittee focused on public collaboration after the feedlot item. And I guess I would be looking for a second from someone to see if this is something that the board would like to discuss today.
put a second on the request for an agenda item to be added to establish a subcommittee.
I'll second it, but I'd like to hear more discussion on what it is.
Thank you,
After
Commissioner
it's seconded.
Peterson. Yeah, all right.
Commissioner Peterson, are you looking for that discussion now or when we get to the agenda item?
Well, I usually have it after it's seconded, then you call for discussion. So I
Yeah,
think
let's
that,
go.
yeah.
Let's go ahead and do that. So is there a discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I'd just like to hear a little more about what the idea is.
And Board Member Hintz, do you want to go ahead and say a little bit more about your motion?
Sure. At the public briefing last week, we talked a little bit about, outcomes of the Environmental Congress and how can we do better public engagement. And then there was a comment also submitted by a member of the public just interested in data transparency and more public engagement. And so as I've been considering my role as a public member and the limited opportunity for more, I guess, in-depth discussion with members of the public or nonprofit organizations, NGOs, that there just is limited time for that at board meetings. And so the thought was, could we take kind of item by item through a subcommittee so that individuals have a chance to have more discourse with public members directly through some facilitated process. Trying to, respect the time of public board members and understand that we're not able to go and reach out to everybody, and yet we're making these important decisions. And it would be great to have an opportunity to hear from other partners in some facilitated format. So that's kind of the genesis of this motion.
Thank you, Board Member Hintz. So why don't we, at this point, then go ahead and wrap these together in the consent agenda. So again, that's the minutes from the November 20th meeting, along with a proposed revised agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. I see Commissioner Stroman has a question. Let me back up there. Commissioner Stroman, go ahead.
Well, Madam Chair, first, I think we have to vote on this amendment. I don't think you can just incorporate it into the consent agenda without a vote. It was a motion that was made and seconded. So just a point of order there. And then I'm not opposed to having further discussion today that would maybe provide some direction, but I would just say I would not be ready without further consideration, nor, to vote on this, nor do we have all of the members here, given that this wasn't on the agenda. So I think it would be more appropriate place for decision in a future meeting when folks had noticed that it was on the agenda.
And I
Particularly given that it's aimed at including being inclusive and transparent.
Thank you for those comments, board members, or Commissioner Stroman, excuse me. Board Member Hintz, I think you were about to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, just that I would agree with that I just wanted to bring it forward for discussion today so we could talk about what the process would look like if there is interest in moving this forward, but that I was not intending it to be an item that would be voted on at this meeting.
Thank you, Board Member Hintz. All right. So let's take 2 steps back. We're no longer calling it a consent agenda item. We are going back to the minutes from the November 20th meeting. So let's do a separate motion on that. Okay. So
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I think with a motion on the floor, we need to take that one before you can go back to a motion on the minutes.
Oh, got it. Okay.
The open motion would be the motion to change the agenda, and then I think we could approve revised minutes, the corrected minutes and the revised agenda together. So we
Okay,
need,
got it. And then that's not called consent anymore.
Right.
Okay,
That's my
all
understanding.
right. So
I'm ready to call the roll on that motion to add, make the
thank
addition
you.
if you are ready, Madam Chair.
perfect. Okay, so we had on just the preliminary agenda for today's meeting, the December 18th meeting. We had a motion to amend it. And we had a second, we had discussion. So now it sounds like we need to do a vote, roll call vote
Yeah.
on that. So Executive Director Nusha, will you go ahead and call the roll on that?
Yes. So this is on the motion to add the discussion of the subcommittee. Commissioner Arnold,
Aye.
Board Member Bakken,
Support.
Board Member Bauerkemper,
Yes.
Board Member Brands,
Yes.
Board Member or Commissioner Cunningham is not present. Chair Dobbenberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Gronball. Don't know. Board Member Hintz,
Yes.
Chair Holman. Chair Holman, you are still on mute.
Sorry. Aye.
Board Member Katzenberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Kessler is not present. Board Member Martin. Commissioner Verlick, present. Board Member Nelson is not present. Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Board Member Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Stroman.
Aye.
That is all 11 members, Madam Chair.
All right. So thank you for taking the roll. And it sounds like the revised agenda for today's meeting is now approved. So at this point, I will go 2 steps back to the minutes from the November 20th meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the November 20th meeting of the EQB?
I'll move. Commissioner Arnold.
Commissioner Arnold. May I have a second?
Member Katzenberger seconds.
Thank you, Board Member Katzenberger. I think is who I heard.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Any discussion? And this is a voice vote for minutes?
It is how we usually do it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right. All in favor of approving the November 20th minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And I'm sorry, maybe that was
Board Member Martin, go. To the-
No, not opposed. Sorry,
Oh.
I could not get myself unmuted quickly enough to let you know I'm here. So sorry, I was trying to let that vote go through before I raised my hand, but I was too quick.
Thank you, Board Member Martin. I'm glad you can join us. So I heard none opposed. So with that, we have now approved of minutes from the November 20th meeting as well. Right. So with that, then we'll go to the next item on the agenda, and that is Executive Director's report. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks everybody for joining us today for our last meeting of 2024. As always, the meeting is being recorded, and if you're online, the chat is open and visible to everyone, but again, we don't save it, and it's not kept as part of the meeting record, so please keep it for logistical issues. Board members, we're going to have good discussion today. As always, welcome your questions and feedback. You can feel free to use the raise hand function or jump in during discussions, and it is of course helpful, especially in this virtual world, to have your camera on while speaking. Members of the public, there's going to be 2 opportunities to give some comment and input today. The first opportunity will be related to item 4, the feedlot EAW form advice and input. And then at the end of the meeting, there will be a time for any general comments. So we do have the slide up. With the public comment procedures, when we get to that part of the agenda, please, members of the public, use the raise hand button and we will add your name to the list of commenters and we will cue you at the when we get to that point in the agenda. Again, as we've noted today, that the notification that you cannot unmute yourself is sometimes a little sticky, so please give it a minute. There might be a slight lag before you can unmute. If the raise hand is not working for you, you can indicate your desire to comment in the chat. And then a reminder, the comment procedures are also in the first 2 pages of the meeting packet. So moving from the logistics to sort of reports and announcements, just as a note of follow-up from our November meeting, we did receive 1 written comment after the meeting, and it was included in your board packet. That was our commenter who had technical difficulties during the meeting, submitted her comments via chat or via email to us. Also, we recently received from the Department of Agriculture the annual Agricultural Chemical Response and Reimbursement Account Report. That program provides financial assistance to parties that are cleaning up agricultural chemical contamination, and the report details revenues and spending. That report's required by Minnesota Statute 18E, and it's required to be sent to multiple agencies, including EQB. So board members, if any of you would like a copy, please let us know and we will get it to you. So a couple of EQB then project updates for all of you. First, bylaws. Given some of our recent conversations and questions about the board's role and authority in various projects, I've been working with our attorney to draft some potential bylaws for the board. Most boards like Bowser and other state boards do operate under bylaws, and I think it's something that will be helpful for us to consider. So I plan in the next few months to bring forward a preliminary draft for you all to consider, and we can discuss what's needed to move them forward. It's common procedure that you never vote on bylaws the first time you see them, so it will be a multi-step process. Another update, the greenhouse gas calculator project development is proceeding along that. A user group has been formed that includes environmental review practitioners. They have been meeting regularly and giving really helpful feedback. So we're really grateful to those folks for the time that they're giving to do that. And the contractor is also going to be helping with some early user training as we move towards rolling that out. The next thing is the environmental review data dashboard, which Steph just popped up there and will show us again. This has launched and is now live on the EQB's website. We have designed a data-specific website that helps includes the projects database and the map where you can, that's been up for a while, and now includes this new dashboard, the goal of which is to make the information that we share in environmental review performance reports more transparent and easily accessible. It's sortable. You can look at filter by EAW process, EIS process. You can see how long certain larger categories of projects take in their time of going through kind of the public notice process. You can look at how people are answering the question, like, did this process, was it useful to you in identifying mitigation measures? So a lot of the same metrics that we put in the performance reports. So we thought this would be helpful for folks who are interested in data. Again, it's on our website. Feel free to take a look. We've also loaded past year performance reports on that website, just so they're a little more available for people rather than having to go back through board packets. We will still plan to do the performance report presentations to ARIS, and normally we do that at the end of the first quarter. So we'll be looking at 2024 data in March, probably, 2025. Last, an update on the Gas Technical Advisory Committee. So the work to develop a temporary framework for gas production is ongoing. I think we talked about that last month. The initial proposal has been released, and there have been 2 public meetings over the last week. That public comment goes through December 23rd. Some comments have been received thus far, including from tribal governments. Specific to EQB's role, I'll just note that tribal comments in particular have suggested that we require an EIS for gas production rather than our proposal, which was an EAW. So that advisory committee, which Jesse Krasinski is our representative to, will be considering all of those comments prior to submitting the final recommendations for a temporary framework on January 15th, which those would then, they're submitted to the legislature and would go through the legislative process. We are also starting our internal staff work to prepare for rulemaking in this area for a more permanent framework. And as part of that, we'll definitely be connecting with the commenters, and you will hear more about this in 2025. So that's just a brief update on some of our ongoing projects, and that is my report, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you, Executive Director Nuschler. Does anyone have any questions for Director Nuschler on the report? Not hearing any. Thank you for that update. Thank you for your help, and Commissioner Stroman's help too with all the Robert's Rules of Order corrections I needed there at the beginning. I learned something new every day in my job, and today I learned more about Robert's Rules. So we will move on in the agenda then. We are now at agenda item 4, which is the feedlot EAW form recommendation. So we have a proposal for a new alternative EAW form for animal feedlots. This alternative form does not require board approval, but I really want to hear from you all. I'm looking for feedback from the board on this alternative form. So we're going to have a presentation and some discussion, take any questions you all have. Our presenters are Kayla Walsh, who's our Environmental Review Program Administrator for EQB, and Megan Cabley, who's the Environmental Review Project Manager with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. This is, as noted earlier, then we will also have some time for public comments on this as well after the board discussion. But with that, welcome, Kayla and Megan.
Great. Well, thank you, Chair and board members, and thank you, members of the public. I'm Kayla Walsh, and I am an Environmental Review Program Administrator here at the Environmental Quality Board. Hopefully you all can see my screen. Let me know if that's an issue at all. Great. Today, I am setting the stage for the board's discussion on the draft alternative environmental assessment worksheet form for animal feedlots. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency did present this information to the Environmental Review Implementation Subcommittee, or ERIS, back in March. And since then, MPCA has finalized their new draft form for animal feedlots. And today, MPCA staff are seeking the chair's approval for that new form. So I will provide a little background info to tee up that conversation. And then I'll invite Megan from the MPCA's environmental review team to give us more details on what prompted this new form and to then go over some of the attributes of the new form. Then after that, we'll leave plenty of time for board discussion. So first and foremost, in Minnesota's environmental review program, we do have a standard EAW form that can be used for any proposed project. So it's 22 questions that help us determine any potential environmental effects from a proposed project. The responsible governmental unit has the authority and the responsibility to identify what information is included in the EAW and also to assess that info based on decision criteria to determine if an EIS is needed. The standard form was last updated by the EQB chair in December of 2022 in order to add questions on climate change. And rules give the EQB chair that authority to approve the form. And they specifically say that the EAW form shall be assessed by the EQB chair periodically and may be altered by the EQB chair to improve the effectiveness of the document. Those same rules continue on to say that the EQB chair may approve the use of an alternative EAW form so long as the RGU demonstrates that the alternative form can better accommodate the RGU's function or better address a particular type of project, and that the alternative form provides more complete, accurate, and relevant information. So in our case today, the MPCA is the RGU seeking approval of the proposed alternative EAW form, and it should better accommodate animal feedlots. Animal feedlots is a mandatory category in EQB's rules 4410, 4300, subpart 29. today's item for discussion, the form does not impact this category's thresholds at all. The MPCA is the RGU for almost all of the feedlot projects that we see doing an EAW, but the rule does say that the county could be the RGU under certain circumstances. Subpart 29 applies to construction of a feedlot for 1,000 animal units or more, or 500 or more if it's in a sensitive area. It also applies to expansions of those same amounts. And for this subpart, connected actions do apply, but phased actions do not apply. And Megan will go into more detail about these triggers and when an EAW is necessary and how to measure animal feedlots. Or animal units, I should say. So then in addition to our existing EAW form, there is an existing approved alternative EAW form for animal feedlots. And this came about in 1999 when then Governor Ventura directed EQB to work with the MPCA and the Department of Agriculture to develop an alternative form for feedlots. And that form was then approved in February of 2000. And it has not been updated since then. So this means that it's not aligned with the standard EAW form after the 2022 climate info was added. So MPCA's proposed form, the one in the board packet, is really bringing the feedlot form up to date and aligning it with the standard form, making review more efficient. And Megan will walk through those details a little bit more, but I think some of the key highlights there are that the proposed form in the board packet, it adds prompts for the user to consider climate, manure handling, and tribal matters. So as I previously mentioned, when you're evaluating any proposed alternative EAW form, the rule asks the chair to consider these things. Will the form better accommodate the RGU's function for animal feedlots? And will it provide more complete, accurate, and relevant information for feedlots, therefore reducing delays? So that's what we're thinking about when we're evaluating it. The memo mentions on page 11 in the board packet that the chair is seeking the board's advice on approval of the proposed form. And if the form should be approved, then it can be used in place of the standard EAW form for its approved purpose. So for any RGU that conducts an EAW for a feedlot project. And then the RGU also does not have to use the feedlot form. The standard EAW form could always be used. So with that procedural context in mind, now I'm happy to invite Megan to come take over and give us some more information on the form itself and all the work that's gone into it. So thank you very much for being here, Megan.
Thank you, Kayla. About 2 years ago, the PCA Environmental Review Unit began looking at the feedlot EAW in order to make the process more efficient for both proposers and us as reviewers, and also bring that language in the feedlot EAW closer to the standard EAW. We have worked with interagency folks and external groups to gain feedback on this revision. Just to take a step back and refresh our minds about the feedlot mandatory category for environmental review, that occurs when the construction of an animal feedlot facility reaches a capacity of 1,000 animal units or more, or an expansion of an existing facility by 1,000 animal units. And that's also for the construction of a feedlot with 500 animal units or more within a sensitive area, which includes a shoreland, a delineated floodplain, wilded scenic river, or karst area. And just for review, 1,000 animal units does not equal 1,000 animals. There are calculations where you can determine, for example, 1,000 animal units for dairy cows equals 714 head. So that's just kind of a little background on when we talk about animal units, we're not talking about number of animals. And to look back at the last 10 years of what we've been reviewing in feedlot, this shows our feedlot decisions since 2013, and that varies from 2 in 2013 to up to 11 in 2018 as the swine operations were ramping up in the state of Minnesota. You can see that this varies by market interest in the construction and expansion of large feedlots. And if we were to look at 2014 right now with our workload, we're currently reviewing 4 feedlot EAWs. And so that's about where we're at right now for 2025, probably. That's what we'll be seeing for decisions, about 4. A typical time frame for review is about 9 months, is what we've typically been at. All right, so the nitty gritty of today is, why do we want to revise the feedlot EAW? It's primarily those things that we've discussed in the past. The 3 primary motivations would be, number 1, the current form is no longer aligned with the updated standard EAW form. And that standard EAW form, which is the EAW for all other activities, has changed multiple times over the years, including the most recent edition of climate updates in December 2022. The second motivation would be to bring that language closer to the standard EAW. And that improves transparency by including all of those questions and information that we are currently asking the proposer to provide us. So that improves efficiency from the quality of the document that we first receive. And then also, when we're looking at it, project reviewers are familiar with the language of the EAW because it looks a lot like our standard EAW. Currently, the wording is very, very different. In this process as well, all of the resource items that we're asking about will be listed on the revised feedlot EAW. And that provides a consistency of review. And also, like I had stated earlier, we're asking those questions up front instead of pulling it out of the proponent. And so we feel like this will increase efficiency of our review and speed up the process. And then finally, number 3, there's been opportunity here to update language to include some housekeeping items or staff edits. And we worked closely with feedlot staff, specialists, water specialists, DNR specialists, and tribes to accommodate better information gathering specific to animal feedlots and to improve that public engagement. We look back on what I presented in March. The draft feedlot document had all kinds of colors. And I wanted to bring this up again just to say, this really represents the existing language in black, the standard EAW language in blue, the climate language in green, and then our housekeeping or edits in red. And a majority of our red items was in the manure management section. And that was very much closely crafted with the PCA feedlot staff in an effort to bring the EAW closer to the feedlot permit. So they're answering very, very similar questions. So we took this draft and addressed internal comments and incorporated it into the draft that's before you today. And I just wanted to make note that there's also a draft guidance document that PCA has published on our website, and we are going to keep that updated and improved as we get new information and guidance that can be provided to our proposers. So let's talk a little bit about engagement and the process that we went through. So like I had stated, in late 2022, our unit began discussions about revising the feedlot EAW. So right in February of 2023, I had begun meeting with the feedlot staff to raise the question and to discuss environmental review needs and more alignment with the feedlot program. And between February and June, we worked out several different drafts And by the end of June, we had a first draft that was complete that we felt we could share with others to get more input. And so in July, we began outreach and feedback with the DNR, EQB, Department of Ag, tribes. We worked through our PCA tribal liaison and set up meetings to discuss what that revision meant. I presented the draft for comment with all of those folks in meetings, and we'd go through the actual document almost ad nauseum, as probably my supervisor can attest to, Dan, and really worked out details in this document. And Helen YQ, the former tribal liaison for PCA, presented this draft feedlot EAW to MinTech last December, and no concerns or comments were received at that time. So by December of 2023, we determined the best way to involve external parties, such as producer groups, environmental organizations, and et cetera, the public in general, was to have the PCA communication director send a general notice advising these groups of an upcoming public comment period through Smart Comment. And so the beginning of this year, way back in January, the PCA ran an informal public comment period through Smart Comment. We didn't have to do it. We just felt like this is a part of the transparency process and to gather input from producer groups and the general public and environmental organizations. So we ran that from mid to late January and received 12 comments, very well thought out comments. I actually was reviewing them this morning. Very good insight. And when we were talking with tribes that were interested in this process, we realized that they just needed more time. And so while the public comment period ended in late January, we gave tribes till the end of February for comment. And we ended up receiving letters from the White Earth Reservation and the Lower Sioux, as well as, I'm sorry, not the Lower Sioux, the Mille Lacs Band. I'm kind of blanking out on their names here a sec. The Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. So we received 2 comments from tribes at that time. So in March, those comments were taken into consideration, draft edits were made, and that's that colorful draft that I presented back in March of 2024. By August 24, we had routed the draft to our county feedlot officers, and no comments were received from our county feedlot officers. And then in April, we kind of hit a bit of a pause in this process because the feedlot permit revision process had began. And these 2 topics are very close to each other. And we didn't want to, to blend it. We wanted to have 2 clearly different processes, the feedlot permit revision process and the EAW, the feedlot EAW revision. So we put things on hold as that permit revision process. And it's still in process, but I believe decisions are going to be made next month on that. So after a bit of a delay, we are back here in December for review by EQB by the board. So again, just to kind of summarize, the purpose and the motivation behind this is really to improve our consistency, our efficiency, and the content of that EAW. So thank you for the opportunity to present before you, and I'd be glad to answer any questions after we're done here.
Thank you, Megan and Kayla for. Oh, I'm sorry, back to Kayla.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Megan. I only have a couple final slides before we hand it back over to the board for discussion. Megan talked through a lot of the outreach that MPCA has done throughout building the form and really deciding the form's contents, but EQB's authority here lies in whether the chair approves the form. So once EQB staff received a final version of the draft from MPCA, we also emailed that draft out to environmental staff members of tribes through the MINTEC, Minnesota Tribal Environmental Committee. Just looking for any final thoughts or red flags so far as the chair's approval of the form goes. I also shared more information at the MINTEC meeting last Friday, and I have not heard any concerns from tribes related to this item. EQB will continue working with MPCA to make sure that we can link to their guidance that Megan mentioned. And that includes that MPCA does have an emissions calculator for animal feedlots, which they keep and make available upon request. And so hopefully having that new guidance and information available will help users to better understand how to answer any questions that may come up on the new form if it were to be approved. And then lastly, EQB staff read the final form and we also evaluated it against these criteria in rule. And this is the same exact slide I shared earlier. I do think the form will ultimately reduce the time spent back and forth between the RGU and the project proposer. The form does seem to better address feedlot projects and provide more complete, accurate, and relevant information. And so therefore, staff do recommend that the chair revoke approval of the 2000 version of the form so we avoid confusion and we don't have two versions of the form. This would mean that any feedlot project that's currently using the 2000 version would be able to continue doing so, but any project beginning after the date of approval of the new form would need to use the new form. And then or I should say lastly, staff also recommend that the chair approve the attached form as MPCA has proposed. And that's on packet page 13. And so with that, we're really looking forward to hearing board discussion. And as Megan mentioned, she and I are available to help answer any questions if needed. So thank you all.
Thank you, Kayla and Megan. Thank you again. And not only for your presentations, but all your work on this over the last almost 2 years, it sounds like. So with that, board members, what questions do you have or any comments on the use of this new alternative form? Board member Bakken, go ahead.
Trying to figure out how to raise my hand and put it back down. What do you see as the amount of, well, I'll back up a little bit. The form looks very straightforward and easy to fill out. However, in the engineering businesses that typically get these EAWs handed off to them to put together for the proposer, I keep hearing that timing is still the biggest concern. In other words, the administration part of it. I realize we're not looking at the administration part of it, but as the form has been put together, what do you see as the amount of time savings and efficiency that this form offers to expedite the request? And then information for myself, who ultimately signs off on an EAW? Is it PCA? Is it EQB? So I guess, and then finally, the third thing I have is when these are being put together, I see all of the meetings that have happened, but has there been consumer outreach to those that are filling out the forms? I guess in my instance here, the engineering firms that are putting these EAWs together, have they, it looks like they've been offered proper opportunity, but have they specifically been talked to? So there's 3 questions there, I guess. I can repeat them if need be, but you can have at that. Thank you.
You, Board Member Bakken. And Kayla, since you popped on the screen, I'll have you, at least with the first part of the question about, it sounds like efficiency. So maybe both the efficiency of being able to fill out the form as well as from the reviewer's standpoint, if I understood your question correctly, Board Member Bakken, and the ability to, you mentioned timeliness. So I'm thinking the review of the RGU as they're looking at the form. Kayla, could you address those?
Yeah, definitely, Chair. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Board Member. I do think that from my understanding in working with Megan and the MPCA, that a lot of these questions are questions that they are already needing to ask a project proposer. And so it eliminates the need to go back and forth if they can ask for all of the information required up front. And as far as the approval of an environmental assessment worksheet, that is the RGU to determine the need for an EIS or not. But I know that, Megan, you have mentioned a lot of work has been done on outreach to the folks who would be filling out the form and having, recommending pre-meetings with them. And I don't know if you would like to speak more to the efficiencies there.
Yeah, you just took the words out of my mouth. That's what I was going to say. I also have it's a great chart. Do you mind if I share the screen?
Go ahead.
So this is, and I can put the link to this in the chat, but this really highlights the process of environmental review and where this back and forth lies that I mentioned. And in fact, what Kayla mentioned here is we really strongly encourage a pre-submittal meeting by the proponent or by the contractor or engineer that's working on the project. We can provide not only the guidance document, but also now we'll be able to talk about if this revision is accepted, we can now discuss the changes to the feedlot form and how it's the same but different. Everything, all those questions are now up front. So that's what we strongly encourage is this pre-submittal meeting. And then once that proposer submits a draft EAW, it really depends on the content of that EAW, on how much back and forth then we have in this 120 days or longer. The more complete that EAW is, the quicker we go through that process. There's less pulling out of information. Once we determine that EAW is complete, then our time clock begins to tick according to rule. We've got 30 days to publish. That goes into public notice. Then we have a comment period. And so really, once we hit the 30-day process, we're off and running. So if we can reduce this circular period, that reduces the time it takes to get through the administrative part. Yeah, and then I think you had asked who signs that document. That would be the PCA commissioner, Commissioner Kessler.
Thank you. I've seen the timeline, and when you're 9-month average, and I think the timeline says 8 to 14 months. So that's well within that. The question that you answered that I've been hearing from the people putting these together has been, they think they have everything together, and then there's one more thing and one more thing. So as far as what I can go back to the people in my district and tell them is this pre-conference meeting sounds like something that would be, and is that new, or was that part of the old ones? Because the one that I'm referencing is functioning off of the old one, but the complaint there was it seemed like they felt like they had a really good EAW put together, and then they needed more information, and then they needed more information and whatnot. And that was a huge frustration. Plus, as the wheels turn slowly anyway, the time delay, even just if it was a week, add it, seconds make minutes, minutes make hours, hours make days kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so just trying to pass along those things as well. So that is all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
You, Board Member Pocken. Then I see hand up by Commissioner Peterson. Go ahead.
Thanks. I think Board Member Bakken asked most of my questions. And then just really clear is like how, so if we, so this is approved and everything, how soon would the MPCA use this, or how quick would it be used?
For that question. Megan, do you want to take that?
Yeah, this is Kayla and I had discussed making this, EQB publishing this, I think after the first of the year. Is that right, Kayla?
Yeah, that's right. So as soon as it were to be signed, any new project could use it. And then we will make an effort to publish it in the EQB monitor and do some outreach, just letting folks know that it's newly available after that point.
No, yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think that was all I had at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. And then Board Member Hinz, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, Board Member Brands and then Board Member Hinz.
Okay, thanks for your presentation. I appreciate it. And I like lots of aspects of the form. I'm wondering a couple of things. One is in the greenhouse gas emissions section, is there a reason why there are not examples of facilities, activities that you would expect to see at a concentrated animal feeding operation that do have greenhouse gas emissions associated with them? And I think I brought up last time in the responses, they're all different, but they're also not. And then the second question is, I had a fun time looking through the MPCA greenhouse gas calculator. And I'm wondering where in there something like an anaerobic digester would fit in, because I didn't see a entry for that. And sometimes we hear that those are mitigation, but I'm not convinced of that necessarily. It depends on the particular facility, how it's maintained, if it's maintained. Sometimes they leak and could be maybe dwarfing the emissions of the rest of the whole operation by itself. So just curious about those two things.
Megan, do you want to take that?
Sure. The greenhouse gas calculator has been a wonderful tool developed within our unit. It's very straightforward. However, it is limited to those activities that we've worked on the most. And so I believe the calculator has dairy, swine, the top of my head, I can't think of the other one, but those are the two primary ones that we've been working a lot on. And so, as we get a new project and we would need to develop that calculator, I see this as a tool that's very dynamic, that we could add that. And as we get more digesters on board, and maybe we add digester to that section, but that would require a separate calculation. So, right now with us, digesters and feedlot, we're trying to we're still trying to figure it out, put it that way, especially with permitting and environmental review. Pipelines can certainly become complicated on who's the RGU on that. So that's a bit of a work in progress. I know it's not a great answer, but and your comment about specific examples in the greenhouse gas section 18, that is definitely well heard. And I think that as we move forward and we learn more, maybe that's a part of another revision, that we just get better at giving examples. The good thing is that we've left that EAW guidance available to make dynamic changes. And without approval from the board, it's just simply a guidance that PCA is going to have. So we can add those to the guidance in that section 18.
Okay, thank you. I know that not every answer is a great answer, but it is an answer. I appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Well, and
Caitlin,
if you
go
don't
ahead.
mind, yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to step in and say that we are also considering anaerobic digestion as we're creating that climate calculator tool that Stephanie is working on. And so we're going to be looking into that more in the future as well. So we're attacking that from multiple different angles.
Thank you, Kayla and Megan. Thank you for that question, board member. And now we'll go to board member Hintz.
Yeah, thanks. I just have one really tiny specific question or clarification on the transportation section. For estimating the number of heavy trucks and then below that, identifying manure application routes and crossings. Is there a reason that you don't call out estimating the number of manure trucks? I assume like under construction, there's multiple different types of trucks that are being considered here, but I wonder if there's a reason not to also include identify the number of manure trucks and application routes, or if there's an intention behind not doing that.
No, I don't think we can capture, all questions in that part. I mean, your point is well taken. I think that, if a member of the public was looking at the EAW, they certainly would want to know what kind of trucks they're talking about, and that could definitely be brought up in public comment. When we look at transportation, we were looking at, impacts to travel, dust, noise, disruption in daily activity. So that might be enough of an umbrella to, to include manure trucks as well as, just folks showing up at the job site or stock trucks coming in and out or the feed truck. There's all types of activity that's coming in and out of those facilities.
Did you have any other questions on that or follow up to that?
No, I mean, I guess if it is an easy addition, I guess I didn't hear a reason why not to do it. So the follow-up would just be, is there a process to include that small change?
Megan, is that?
I think
something-
too, we have that guidance available if we would like to call out specific examples of what to include. Again, this is probably a much more changeable document, the guidance would be. So we could certainly include, calling out specific manure application, trucks and transport. Would that satisfy? Or, I mean, right now we're looking at I don't know, Kayla, is the document we're looking at what we're voting on today? I think that's or not me voting, I'm sorry. The chair looking at making a decision.
That's correct. The document in the board packet.
Yeah, I think, just to note my comment, if there's an opportunity to include it in the guidance, I don't need to hold up, and I know it's not the full board, it's really the chair, but I'm not trying to hold that up today, but I think that might be a helpful call out in the guidance for public information.
Absolutely, I will put that in there.
Member Hanson, thank you, Megan. And I think our executive director has some thoughts on that too.
Yeah, Megan and board member Hintz, I was just thinking, clarifying, the truck traffic is really about, my understanding is the impacts of a truck as a truck, regardless of what it's carrying, correct? Not, you were talking, Megan, about emissions and fugitive emissions and truck traffic. And like, I would assume that the amount of manure that's happening is somewhere else. I just want to get that straight in my head. But I think board member Hintz's suggestion about guidance, well taken.
So we'll take a look at the guidance then and make sure it's clear. Other questions or comments? there aren't any other board member questions at this point, we want to offer the opportunity for the public to make any comments on the feedlot EW alternative form for consideration. So at this time, we'll move to that. Please use the raise hand function if you'd like to comment, or note in the chat if you'd like to comment. And Colleen will call on you and be able to be unmuted at that point and speak online. And please be relatively brief comments, remarks. Do we have any commenters?
Chair, we have one commenter with their hand up right now. Amelia Oaks. Sorry if I'm saying your name incorrectly. We're going to unmute you, and it might take just a second. Oh, good. Go ahead.
Sounds like you can hear me okay. Thank you. This is Amelia Voss, Climate Program Director and Attorney at Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy. And I wanted to first thank the staff at EQB and MPCA for the hard work that you've done on this. I think this revision to bring the form in line with the standard EAW form was really important, and I appreciate all that's gone into this. And my one piece of feedback is just that in question 18, where we're looking at calculating the greenhouse gas emissions for the projects, I do think it would be valuable if some of the examples on that chart mentioned the enteric fermentation and the manure storage and application emissions, just because those, those aren't specific examples given in that table, but I think they are the most important emissions or some of the most important and largest emissions from feedlots. And so I know they're mentioned in the guidance, but I want to make sure they don't get overlooked, and it might help to create some regulatory clarity for project proposers to see that example on the table and realize, oh, we need to include those too. If they're just relying on looking at the guidance, I worry that people might miss that and then have to go through subsequent rounds of revisions to kind of make sure they're capturing the full picture of their greenhouse gas emissions. So my suggestion would just be adding the enteric fermentation and manure storage and application emissions as examples to that table that's on question 18 for the greenhouse gas emission calculation. Thank you very much.
For that comment, Amelia. That's under advisement. Colleen, do we have any other commenters?
We don't at this time.
Well, I appreciate all the input today. It seems like we have general consensus on moving forward with the form that the MPCA is proposing, that it meets the requirements of the rules. Therefore, I'm going to approve the alternative EAW form for animal feedlots as proposed by the MPCA here at this meeting, December 24th. But with that, we'll take a look at the guidance as discussed and any clarifications necessary on that form. But with that, I'm also revoking approval of the February 2000 version of the alternative EAW form for animal feedlots. Projects that are already underway may continue to use that form. Also directing EQB to work expeditiously to implement the approval of the new alternative EAW form for animal feedlots. Thank you all for the discussion on that. Thank you, Madam Chair. Then that brings us to the added item for the agenda that was moved and or proposed by Board Member Hintz, and that was a consideration of a subcommittee on public collaboration, engagement, and transparency. So, and for those who might not have been on at that time, why don't I go back to Board Member Hintz, if you could summarize that one more time to kind of maybe kick off a little bit of a discussion on what you'd like to bring forth for the board's consideration.
Yeah, thank you. So at our public briefing last week, we were talking about opportunities for public engagement, outcomes of the Environmental Congress, feedback from that event, and how to do public engagement moving forward. And then also had received a comment about, data transparency, and I think a specific suggestion of, what opportunity might there be for a subcommittee around public engagement. So in that discussion, I felt, specifically as a board member and trying to be active in public discourse, and given the limited amount of time that we have within our full board meetings to take comment and then have like real back and forth with commenters, I wondered if it might make sense to have a more formal process for this. And so the motion that I made was really just to add this as a discussion item today, but I guess what I would be looking for is some staff direction on how would we go about creating a subcommittee, and I got a little bit of feedback from Catherine too, or Director Nuschler, on just what are the steps that need to be taken, and how many members would be part of this? What would the process look like? And so I know there would be some work that would need to go into a more formal proposal if this is something that the board wanted to move forward with. But I wanted the chance for more board discussion on the agenda item, with really, again, the main goal being commissioners included, but as a public board member, how can we do a better job and allocate our time appropriately to really have good feedback from those who have taken time to submit comments, and ask questions ourselves of those individuals too. So that's the impetus for this, and I'd love to hear any other feedback, if there is some.
Thank you, Board Member Hintz. And I see a hand up by Commissioner Stroman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair and Board Member Hintz. Thank you for bringing this forward for discussion. And I'm wondering if we could take one step backwards and maybe focus on that goal that you are trying to achieve, which I think is a really important one, about how the EQB board, and I understand your focus is primarily on public board members, but I think the board generally can really sort of meet the promise on public engagement that is in our strategic plan, and we have a lot of conversation about it. And I'll just offer that I think there are multiple ways that we could achieve that. A subcommittee is one idea. I will just observe that that's a process that works for some people who can take time during an allocated specific time and come and engage. And there's still, a broad section of views and perspectives that get left out of that process. And so what I might propose is that we take your goal, which I wholeheartedly agree with, and rather than have the staff focus on the subcommittee idea solely, have staff come back to the board with a couple options or a few options of how we might achieve that goal. A subcommittee certainly could be one of them, but there might be other things that we could do that achieve that goal, that also allow perhaps in a more effective way, in a more open way, for voices that we don't tend to get at these meetings, or might not get at a subcommittee meeting too. So I would offer that as maybe a path forward to give the board some options to look at and further this discussion in order to meet the goals that you're suggesting. So curious what your thoughts are and other board members' thoughts on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Stroman. Whether board members have thoughts on what Board Member Hintz proposed and the suggestions brought up by Commissioner Stroman. Go ahead, Board Member Smith.
Yeah, thanks for both of your points there chiming in. And I also agree that I think the public engagement process is a critical path on really ensuring that we are getting that input and feedback on not only improving our current processes, but also how do we get to achieving some of those goals that are outlined in the strategic plan and the work plan and other things there. So I would probably tend more towards Commissioner Stroman's thoughts of let's have the staff come back with a suite of options on what this could look like. So everything from part of our discussion around does the Environmental Congress maintain, or what does that look like moving into the future, all the way through and up to the subcommittee idea. So I'm really willing to listen to what those options could be. And then also looking at, as a public board member, how can I better engage with my district constituents and continue the conversation across, not only within the board, but across everything we do. So appreciate the comments, appreciate board member Hintz bringing this up, and do also think it's a very important piece that should be addressed in further discussion at a future meeting. So thank you.
Board Member Smith. Thoughts from board members? You, Director Nuschler, is that something you think you staff could to some options back to the board in a future meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think, yes, we absolutely can. And I think, you know, we are planning next month to bring you all kind of a summary of the Environmental Congress. And there's, you know, some discussion about like, what did we hear that is important through lines for EQB? I think some of that is in there. I am sorry that unfortunately Priscilla is not feeling well today, so she's not joining us, because I know she's been thinking about a lot of these as our engagement coordinator. I think there's a lot of potential options, ranging from, you know, figuring out how board members can be part of engagement plans on specific kinds of projects, to this subcommittee idea, to larger ideas. I will say I'm hearing a little bit of two sort of separate chunks to this out of from what, you know, board member Hinson, board member Smith said, and what Commissioner Stroman said, which is both the how do we make sure we get new voices in and that EQB is hearing all the voices, but also this desire for the public members as they're representing the folks in their congressional districts to have some framework, I guess, for engaging with those folks in their district. So I think there's kind of two parts to that we could look into. Board member Hintz, would you say, or board member Smith, or any of the other public board members, would you agree with kind of that, looking for that framework to engage with the public in your district to some degree? I see board member Hintz nodding. Okay.
I see a hand up by board member Martin. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm not sure I managed to get my camera on. I certainly am interested in that idea of framework for engaging with folks within the districts that we're representing. So yes, I wanted to ask kind of a clarifying question though, of board member Hintz. I agree with Commissioner Stroman that like a subcommittee is only one of many potential mechanisms to increase or to improve public engagement, especially with, you know, voices that are not heard. But I wanted, is your suggestion that the subcommittee would be the mechanism for that, or are you thinking more a subcommittee would be like maybe engaging with staff to come up with what additional mechanisms could be used for public engagement? Because if it's the latter, then it's not really, you know, the two suggestions are not really in conflict. And I certainly agree that like whatever committees and subcommittees that EQB creates, if we're just doing it, you know, sort of in the same ways that we currently do things, we're not going to expand voices and access.
Yeah, I was mentioning the subcommittee as one potential framework, but I'm very open to the suggestion of having staff consider multiple frameworks or opportunities to improve public engagement and to come back to this. I think part of my reason for picking the subcommittee in particular was that we've had some comments about, we're getting summarized public comment, or it's just been challenging to see what the actual true comments are from people who have spent that time putting those together. And I wondered if a subcommittee was a place for just ongoing discussion or dialogue when those public comments are received, kind of like going into an upcoming full board meeting, that might be an opportunity to just have more dialogue around submitted public comment. But that, again, just one example. And I think that the main piece I'm trying to communicate is that, like, what is the framework for how we can best engage with the people that we're representing. So very open to that suggestion and happy to hear feedback from staff.
Member Hintz, and then Commissioner Stroman, go ahead.
So just two other thoughts I would add on this. One is, I think in this conversation as we go forward, we need to have some discussion about the role of staff and the role of the board. Because I think, some of what I'm hearing is like, is the board going to take on the role of, and certainly individuals could, but right, is it the board's responsibility to do all of that legwork, or is some of that staff responsibility? And so I'm not saying one way is right or wrong. I think we need to be clear on that going forward for the benefit of staff and the benefit of the board and the benefit of the public. So I think, that can be part of maybe what comes back is where are those roles and lines appropriate. And then the other thing that I would just also observe that probably is a point of further discussion. I entirely appreciate public members want to fulfill a responsibility of representing the public. I will just observe we are also one board. We are not two boards, a board of agency members and a board of public members. And so there needs to be a process by which the board can act. And so I just think, again, like whatever framework that is needs to also fit within a functioning board in its totality. So probably Director Neuscher, that's where some of the bylaw conversation comes in and things. But I think that needs to be part of this conversation about going forward too, and what that framework might look like and how we think about public engagement.
Thank you, Commissioner Stroman. And then, Board Member Hintz, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify too that I'm certainly not trying to suggest that the board is, taking the place of the work that the staff does. And I appreciate the summarization of comments, like all of that is necessary. It's maybe on these stickier topics where there is a desire for more nuanced information. And in my experience, it's really case by case. So again, how do we find the framework for like just very specific issues where there is a desire for more of that, but the full board meeting doesn't allow the time for that back and forth discourse? And I think, examples like Environmental Congress seem like so broad that we don't have the chance to get into the nitty gritty of like, well, why are you concerned about that? Why did you spend so much time considering the health impact assessment, for example? There's numerous comments about that. And I feel like, I don't know, even just more discussion with staff. Why did you summarize it this way? What was this about? And getting into that depth allows us to do a better job. And so not trying to be prescriptive here, just bringing forward the things that I've been hearing.
Thank you for that. Board Member Smith, go ahead.
Coming back around. All right. So one additional point back to Commissioner Stroman's thoughts there about, I think the intent is definitely not to create two boards of commissioners and public members. I foresee like whatever the framework looks like moving forward, like commissioners can use the same framework to engage with their staff and team members across the agencies, while we take those similar comments or concepts and engage with the constituents across our district. So I foresee that as being very much aligned moving forward, and having that understanding I think was really important. But I appreciate that comment. Thanks, Commissioner Stroman, on that, and the understanding that, yeah, let's figure this out the best path forward and identifying what makes the most sense of probably back to Executive Director Nuschler's bylaws project and how can we outline those roles and responsibilities and what this looks like. So appreciate all the conversation.
Board Member Smith. Others on this today? Any more hands up? I think we could probably conclude this agenda topic for today anyway, with the understanding that EQB staff is going to give some thought to this and what could be different methods of ways to approach trying to achieve the goal of more transparent public engagement, those opportunities, stakeholders to we have back and forth opportunities more so than just commenting.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And we will try to bring this back expeditiously. I don't think it's going to happen for January because our packet has to go out on January 3rd. And as you might suspect, a lot of us are taking some time off. So it probably won't be January, but we will work expeditiously to bring something back to you all.
Right. Okay, our final agenda item then is general public comment. So as you might recall, the first public comment period was specific to the EAW feedlot alternative form. This is the general public comment period now. So if there are those who would like to comment, please raise your hand in Teams. We will call on you. So yeah, being online today, we'll notify you when you can unmute and speak. So just be patient as there might be that little bit of lag that we were talking about earlier in the meeting. Colleen, are you seeing anybody in a note in the chat, or I don't see any hands up myself?
No hands up at this time.
Give it just another few seconds here in case people are working their technology to raise their hand. All right, I am not seeing anything and neither is Colleen. So I think we can go ahead and move to closing and adjournment. So thank you, board members, for your participation today and the comments that you provided, questions on the topics we had. We've reached the end of the agenda, and before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I just want to thank you all for your participation on the board in 2024. This is our last board meeting of 2024, and I look forward to working with you all in the new year. And I hope everybody has a little peace and quiet over the holidays and can find a little bit of joy, especially in the snow that's coming tomorrow. So with that, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Member Katzenberger, so moved.
Thank you, Board Member Katzenberger. Can I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Peterson? That sounded like Commissioner Peterson. I think that was Commissioner
Second.
Peterson.
Yeah,
Second.
very good.
All right, thank you. All right. Any discussion? Right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Bye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Nay? All right. Hearing no opposition, the motion carries and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you again.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Cheers.